Hello. So, ask yourself this question, or actually this reality. Everyone in this room has been wronged by someone one way or another. It's an inevitable fact of human life. Everyone has had an action or something hurtful against them said. So, ask yourself this now. Is the path to revenge really worth it? Is that blind rage really going to help you? So, a man named Miller said, it's far easier to forgive an enemy after you've gotten even with them. So I emphatically disagree with that quote, because that quote basically is like a description of blind hatred and saying, oh, I am willing to forgive my enemy, but first let me just utterly destroy them in the way they did me. So that's a no-end way. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of what's that like and how that can impact someone's life. So to play it in, this quote is very interesting because he didn't say, let me give or get revenge on the person. He said, it's far easier to forgive an enemy after you've gotten even. So he is saying he's willing to forgive. So a good example of that would be like modern day US politics. I mean, they're not totally out of the question of working together, but first they want to get back at each other for, tax bill, immigration, all sorts of nonsense. But they are, in the end, willing to work. And that is a very important thing to know, is that there's a big difference between just blind rage and then there's rage and then forgiveness. So this person obviously wanted to, get revenge but then seek forgiveness. But I still think that's wrong, because is that forgiveness really going to be the end? Is that going to be the zero sum? Because revenge is it's a never-ending loop. You get revenge on someone, you say forgiveness, no, because then that person wants revenge, and it's a hateful cycle. And it can impact a lot of things, which leads me to your life. So revenge is a all-consuming fact about someone. It can eat up your time, your mental process. It will ruin your relationships with your family, because you're only going to define yourself through that said emotion about you. And is that really how you want to be remembered? Do you want to be remembered as, hey, that's the guy who went to college and got a life, or hey, that's the guy who devoted like 20 years because someone said a harmless joke or pulled a prank or something? Now, if it was a more serious action, then that's a different matter of debate. But like this guy said, it's far easier to forgive an enemy after you've gotten even with them. So we can assume it's a minor detail. Well, when he says that he wants forgiveness, Miller is actually, I don't think Miller has a grasp of what forgiveness is, because he would know that after you've gotten even with someone, there's no guarantee that that person is going to be forgiving. And you could say, oh, I forgive you, and that person say, yeah, sure. But how do you know he actually forgave you? How do you know 10 years later there's going to be a knock on your door and it's going to be a surprise or something like that? You never know what's going to happen. So I think an important moral to all of our lives that we should all know is that revenge is a dead-end road. And if you go down it, there really is no going back, because you're not going to have the mental capacity to say, hey, I better stop myself. So once you go down that road, there's no turning back. So pick the right path. Thank you, everyone.
I thought your greeting and dramatic statement at the beginning were pretty effective ways to get our attention and get us to the topic. You've got a rhetorical question to go along with that. Your thesis is clearly stated. There's a little bit of a preview, although it really just kind of suggests that the direction that you're headed without telling us what to look for along the way. I think you started off with a pretty good example, although you needed to explain how it applied more. That's the U.S. political situation. You kind of just say the same thing and repeat the purpose that you have in the speech, and just plug in the political figures without giving us an example or detail that illustrates that particular point. So it does sound a little bit generic. Later examples, like I said, I think you lost a little bit of the organizational structure that you'd set up. It just feels like you are going through whatever example you can come up with next, and sometimes that's okay, but if there's a pattern, it's going to be a lot better. Your vocal inflection, though, is good. There's great variety while you're speaking, so that you're using the nonverbal skills there pretty effectively. Your facial expressions could be a little bit more vivid. Your eye contact, though, is generally solid, and there are some nice gestures while you're speaking, so you look engaged while you're talking to us. Like I said, I think you do a good job with your voice. You could maybe be a little bit more engaging with some of the visual factors during the presentation as well. You do have a tendency to look at the topic occasionally, but you also had a very solid exit at the end of the presentation. Thank you. Well, thank you.